On this special edition of the Modern Dealer Podcast, David and I have traveled all the way to Las Vegas to visit the NADA2020 convention, and we had the opportunity to sit down with Adam Steele, an associate at Mac Murray Shuster, to talk about all things compliance. Welcome in to a very special episode of the Modern Dealer Podcast. Today we are at NADA 2020 show in Las Vegas, and we have the opportunity to meet with a variety of people in and around the car business. And today we are meeting with Adam Steele. Adam is an attorney in the specializing in the automotive industry, and as he was just named before we turned on the cameras, that right now is a very pivotal time in automotive for the modern dealer in regards to legislation, in regards to regulation, and all things legal. But before we get into that, we got any coffee going on here?
We got coffee coming, man. My wife went to go get it. Should be ETA on coffee. Should be in about 2
to 3 minutes. I felt like you guys were dropping a ball here. I was like,
yeah, you know, it's like. And Adam's been watching the show, so he understands we do coffee. Yeah. We do a little sock checking. I even got my truck socks on today, man. So I was deep on it says keep trucking. I think it says something.
Can you
like
get
that?
Sure,
so
sure.
we were actually rolling it that way. So yeah, but it's it's just gonna be pretty cool little episode here. So
I did my best to have cool and unique socks as well.
Hey, right. Look at them.
I tried to participate.
Influential, bringing it, man.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What we like to do on the Modern Dealer Podcast is really find out the origin story. So a little throwback to comic books and movie superheroes. But from an automotive perspective, how did you become the car guy for your firm?
Sure. Yeah. So if you want the history, it probably starts when I was 5 years old. My dad taught me how to change out the spark plugs on my brother's '69 Mustang, and I mean I didn't do anything right. He was just I was just like, he'd say 9mm. I'm like, this one? And he would yell at me. But I was just in love from that moment forward. That Mustang was so cool. And moving on past that, I mean, I was like 8 or 9 when the first Fast and the Furious film came out, and so I was just like, these are gods! Paul Walker's been my life! And then as I got a little more mature and started to learn more and more about the history of the automotive industry, Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles became huge for me. So when Ford vs. Ferrari was announced, I lost my mind. Right? I fangirled out of my mind. My wife was like, are you serious? It's just a car. And I was like, it's not just a car.
You don't understand.
So yeah, that passion, it's funny, you'd think I would have ended up working more directly in the automotive industry,
in retail or working for a factory, or I mean there's a lot of different ways you can enter the car business.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And but how I ended up heading the legal route was because I was one of those annoying people who just knew tons of facts and was like aggressive about it. People are like, well, you're a good arguer, you'd be a good lawyer. Right. And which is, by the way, a terrible reason to become a lawyer.
Yes.
That means you're a bad lawyer, actually, if you're obnoxious. But so I decided to pursue that, and I was like, well, there's money in it and everything. I just kind of fell into it. Then once I was in law school, I was like, wait, this is a thing, automotive law. I mean, it's so regulated, it's so heavily regulated that if you have the ability to provide counsel to a dealership on anything from its financing agreements with third-party financing companies to its consumer protection issues when they get sued, down to like an employment issue. Somebody wants to take extended leave and they're making up reasons and stuff. Being able to provide for those just all of these laws coming from all these different directions, and I was like, and it would be with cars every day. And so when I was a student still, I got this job as a clerk, and it was actually for the former the car lawyer of Ohio. His position at my firm drew me there because I was like, well, I want to learn under him. Yeah. And he was getting ready to retire at that point, but day one, he gave me some research issue regarding custom, or it was a classic Stingray Corvette that was sold claiming it was the original engine in it. It wasn't. And he was wanted me to do some research about jurisdictional issues, like some boring crap.
Right.
But it was about a Stingray Corvette.
Exactly, right?
Something, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is my thing. I mean, anything, even when it's boring, it's about cars. Yeah. That's my thing. So yeah, since graduation, I have really focused all of my work around the representation of automotive dealerships, and have been fortunate to obtain my own dealership clientele there in Ohio, and it's working out so far. But I think, we're coming full circle back to what you had mentioned before about how important these differences,
today more so than everything else. But what's really interesting too, before we get there, we did a podcast episode, this last one, which is 33. We talked about NADA, the National Automobile Dealers Association, and kind of the origin and history of it. So today we're at NADA2020, this huge event. I mean, our booth is next to a booth with planes in it.
Selling aircraft.
So anybody that sells into the automotive industry is here today. It's a gigantic event. But really, the NADA, the organization itself, started out because of legislation, which is kind of interesting to think. Almost 100 years later, we're having a conversation on how the modern dealer really needs to be paying attention to legislation.
Right. Absolutely. And I think along with that attention to legislative issues comes also a change in the perspective on what is good compliance practices. The difference between waiting for something to go wrong and like doing your best and just being like, well, it'll probably be okay. It probably won't.
Right.
That's
probably the best thing to really take away from this, is probably won't be okay.
I mean, and there was a time where that attitude worked just fine. You do your best you can to be fair to your customers.
Yep.
And that reputation would be enough to give you success, because laws were simpler and technology was so much simpler. And now we deal with these rules and regulations that are highly complex. They deal with highly complex issues and they're written in super vague ways, so nobody knows what they actually mean, and they carry crazy penalties attached to them. And so it'll probably be okay means that there's like a 90% chance you miss something. Yeah. And but that proactive, being willing to take a proactive and thorough approach to making sure that you're obeying all these rules. I mean, it's annoying to have to go through the processes up front and put together the forms and whatnot, work through it. You feel like you're paying for nothing. Like, what am I getting out of this?
Right.
Well, let me illustrate an example, perhaps. So one of the services that my firm provides periodically to a number of clientele is TCPA audits. They're audits of the Telephone Consumer Protection Act compliance with its rules and requirements. Well, those audits, they're a little pricey. I mean, depending on the size of the company, if it's a really big company, I mean, you could be talking tens of thousands of dollars to do a full evaluation and get them ready to go. And nobody likes it, because they kind of are like, well, what are the chances that we're going to get sued and whatnot? Well, the thing is that with that law, there's actually a whole professional plaintiffs association that are focused on
coming after dealers.
Yes. And with developing technology with dealer management systems and CRMs that are now being provided with additional software in them that allows for mass texting, mass calling, that kind of thing is being packaged to the dealer as a convenient thing, right? Yes. So the technically made it. They're like, look at this thing I did for you. And the dealer's like, oh, thank you. They've just been handed a bomb, And being prepared to do your due diligence and your evaluations in advance to make sure that you're not violating any rules. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in penalties. I mean,
wow. And I think what's an interesting perspective on this as well is that, David and I, we have a history going back to the 90s selling cars. The dealership that we worked for was acquired by AutoNation. It was an early acquisition, meaning that I think they only purchased a couple groups before us. So this was in 98, 99. Yep. And that was kind of the beginnings of large corporations coming into automotive. So for the dealerships that are out there right now that are a part of an AutoNation or a Lithia, they have large legal teams that are making sure they're going through all of the steps that need to make sure that they're compliant. But for the other dealerships, maybe you're a dealership group that has 1 or 2 dealerships, you're a mom and pop store selling 50 cars in some rural, some rural area, wherever you are, you have the same challenges as the big guys do. And maybe somebody like an AutoNation or an Asbury, they would be able to handle a case if somebody came against them. But the smaller dealerships, I think that maybe there's more area of concern there.
There's a much greater burden on the dealerships that are still family owned, and they're in their second, third generation of ownership. The burden is actually much greater for them because, like you're saying, that there's not a corporate legal team to provide guidance, which means that there's more of a chance that doing the best you can, you're gonna slip up. And I think that's that for me is part of my great passion with working with dealerships. Is that I grew up in a family-owned business environment. My dad made tons of sacrifices to make his dream business work, and I watched that from him, and I have very real understanding of like the cost of things, right? And so while I say that like, and you need to be valuable, you need to be ready to invest up front to avoid these issues. At the same time, let's be realistic about compliance. Like, what are simple solutions to make sure that we are protected without going out of our minds, and that's I think that is additionally a big part of this whole modern dealer culture. Like, how do we just do it right and don't make it showy or something? And I don't mean to call it marketing people right now, but like the thing is that it only takes one clever marketing intern who's just like, I've had an idea, right? We could take all of the phone numbers from our prior customers and we could send them a mass text about our oil change specials. And that $10 discount on oil changes has now created a $200 million lawsuit.
Right.
And thank you, clever marketing intern. And so it's very important that the leadership of dealerships be on it, be aware, or have hired somebody to be aware for them. I mean, ideally, at the top, they should be proactively trying to understand these rules so that they are prepared to lead their employees in compliance. But worst case scenario, you need to at least have somebody assigned to pay attention.
So let's try to break it down. Let's say that we have a small dealership. 'Cause I think the big dealership, the corporate, the corporate stores, the high volume dealerships, maybe part of 40, 50 store groups. I think they probably got it.
Big legal team, like the 20.
But I think some of the smaller dealerships now, maybe it is a small mom and pop, and maybe you do have a marketing director that is thinking exactly what you're talking about right now. Let's go ahead and just dig into our database. Let's grab all those numbers. Let's send out a mass text. So, what are some what are some specific things that marketing person should be thinking about? Should they just, before you do anything, make sure that we're reaching out to somebody like you, the general counsel for the dealership, or is there some general blocking and tackling things that they can do, such as making sure that you have an opt-in process? So maybe could we break it down? And of course, we're not looking for any legal advice specific, but just some general best practices. Best
practices for sure. So yes to everything you just said, actually. So a big part of when I say those compliance audits, part of those audits, it's not just identifying what you're doing wrong. That is a big part of it, and it's important to identify what's being done wrong. But then it's about, okay, well, how do we implement a fix? And so that typically is centered in processes and procedures that we will provide to the company, and then the employees need to be trained on them, right? So they have at least a cursory understanding of these rules. I would not expect any, particularly the TCPA is a great example. I wouldn't expect anybody who's not a lawyer to not or to understand it, really. Right. It's crazy. It's a moving target. But you can still get a cursory understanding of the issues, things like what does qualify as an automatic telephone dialing system, and the consents necessary for marketing versus just informational contact with consumers. What I will say, though, is that as far as consent goes, put it on everything. Just I mean, you may feel like it's tons of offer.
I want to stop you a second. So just break it down one step further.
Okay.
So
yeah, sure.
So the challenge here is, let's say a customer is coming to your dealership website and they are registering for a test drive, and they're just filling out a simple form that says, hey, my name is David, I want to take a test drive, here's my phone number and my email. And now they have it. It's in their database. It's in their CRM, and a dealership probably has hundreds of those.
Sure. From those people opting in,
right?
So
now, unless when they provided their information, unless they specifically provided consent to be able to be marketed to, that's where the challenge or the issue is. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct. And in situations where there's such a direct request to be contacted, there is, I'm not going to say an exception necessarily, but wiggle room. A little bit of wiggle room. But the thing is that you keep that contact information on file, and then you call them to schedule it, and they tell you like, oh, I'll figure it out later. You know, if people do that, they're like, oh, they kind of chickened out of their sale. Well, then you call them a week later, you're in violation. I mean, you have a
boom. Okay.
Wow.
Because the thing is that, like, I mean, it's kind of inferred there that the person really wasn't that interested anymore. You are now chasing them, and the whole point behind the TCPA and state juvenile call rules and everything is to give consumers control over their lives again, right? And the way they're being contacted by so many people. It's hard. It's hard to speak in generalized terms about the type of thing you're saying, though, with like an online form like that, because I mean, pretty much every dealership has. So capture
every dealership.
Yep. And if it's a generalized one, just to capture their contact information, like I see it sometimes where they'll put it on the calculate my price button. You click on that, and it'll pop up, and you have to put in your email and phone number and stuff.
Right.
And it just has their name, email, and phone number, and that is a huge no. But it's so common. I mean, both of you knew exactly what I was talking about. You see on like every dealership website, and that's a pretty blatant violation of the TCPA's prior express written consent requirements and proper lead generation capturing for contacting consumers. So. There's me not giving legal advice, but that was not legal advice. It wasn't. It was just my opinion. Anyway, so it's difficult to speak about it in such generalized terms because that one where you're just capturing their contact information, that one is a little different than when they filled out a form to get a test drive, because that one's a little more proactive. They want to be contacted, right? So really what you need to have in place, though, this goes back to your original question about the marketing department and stuff like that, is processes and procedures, so that they know who to even ask about. Like, I have an idea. Who should I ask? You know, and maybe it's an administrator, maybe it's the dealership's lawyer. I think it's good to develop a relationship with an attorney who you feel comfortable with. I mean, I'm not saying just go hire a massive corporate legal team, because again, like most people can afford a 20-lawyer legal team, but like, find a resource that is available to you to just make a phone call, toss it by you, that resource, and see what they have to say. And that is a really affordable way for these smaller dealerships to achieve compliance. I mean, there has to be ongoing sensitivity to the cost of things, because when something comes up, it's an issue. When your resource points out to you, like, this is a really bad thing.
Whoa. Did you really do that?
Right.
It's like, Houston, we have a problem.
The stories I could tell. Phone calls.
You can start your own podcast with just the stories of compliance. It's like compliance debauchery. Hit decline on that there. That's why I said I need to set that to airplane mode and start recording again. All right. Boom.
So that's a good idea. Maybe I'll do that. We'll see. Maybe I'll be on your guys a few more times.
That'd be great.
And do my own.
We can do a Zoom style one too. So actually, we can have you join from your office to our studio. We've done them on Zoom.
We'll do that.
Zoom platform. Okay. So we have people out of state join us all the time.
Sure.
And if you need an excuse to come down to Tampa,
there you go. Sunny weather.
There you go.
I know you're from the great state of Washington State, and enjoying the wetter weather, and he lives in Ohio now. But we are the Sunshine State for a reason. So
so I did spend some time in Fort Lauderdale back in 2009, 2010, and I mean I get it.
It's nice. I mean,
that's West Coast. That's West Coast. East Coast, Florida. We're West Coast. We're a little bit different. So we're the more the California style in our case.
Right. I mean, I'm just not gonna make a qualification for this. I guess, but
getting back to so those simple opt-in pages, just to take one little tip away from this, if a dealer improperly used that information, if somebody just opted in, didn't come in for the test drive, didn't do anything, and you tried marketing to them, beyond a week later, I mean, is there a time frame, or is it just? It's just like that gray area you kind of mentioned. It's just like almost a feeling.
Yeah.
How do you?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, as a manager of a dealer, and like if I was running a dealership and I got this lead and I handed it to the salesperson, then they call the customer like, I should right now. Salesperson was off the next day, and the customer, and it's just like, when is it the time that we can keep following up with them?
Right. Yeah. And you're right. There's so many parts of these rules that aren't explicit. It's not. I mean, you have to draw inferences from case law, from the developing legislatures and stuff. I mean, that's why Michelle Shuster, the managing partner of my firm, I mean, she's a TCPA expert. It's her whole career. Like,
it's just that one thing.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the TCPA so that I can advise my clients on it, but she is like a national expert on this one law because it's that complicated and so vague. And so, but have either one of you ever heard of the bona fide error defense when you were in sales?
I think so, but it's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that kind of floats around, but the essentially the idea is that if a consumer's harmed and you can establish that you had proper procedures in place to avoid this, and that this situation is a weird one-off thing where it all fell through or whatever, you were doing what you could, right? Then with the bona fide error defense, you can actually limit the consumer's recovery just to their actual damages, which in a consumer protection lawsuit is usually very little, what they're actually harmed with. Now, the bona fide error defense doesn't exist in federal regulatory spheres, but that same attitude does, right? You can't, I mean, it's not going to be an automatic limitation to actual damages, but a judge is going to look at a dealership that was trying a lot more favorably, and it's particularly the regulatory authorities, the agencies, FTC, and the Attorney General's offices who are in charge of bringing these actions on behalf of states. They are always more willing to work with dealership on.
Somebody's trying to do the right thing. So I think what a big takeaway would be is for dealerships, they need to have a process in place, a vetted process in place, and they need to be trying as hard as they possibly can to do the right thing. So if anything does happen where, one of these, I'm not in the legal industry at all, but there's almost like predators out there looking for dealers to make a mistake because they know that a lot of people know that dealers have deep pockets, so they're a great place to go to sue people, right? So if you have a predator attorney that's looking for potential clients to go after in this instance, the most important thing a dealership, or an important thing a dealership would be doing, is making sure that they have a process in place and they're doing the right thing to try to make sure that it gets adhered to constantly.
It's kind of, and the thing is that really you'll avoid most of these problems just by doing that, and then when they do come up, you now have all of this kind of extra wiggle room to work with regulators and enforcers to say, like, we had our compliance attorneys, we had these processes in place, and this isn't just applicable to the TCPA. It's really applicable to TCPA because of how all over that place that law is, and it's still developing. But this is applicable to all parts of of your business practices, and that's where I think this idea of the modern auto dealer is so important and so big. Is that there needs to be, you have to have this shift now with how complicated rules have gotten. It's more than just trying to be fair to your customers. That is still important, obviously, for your reputation and just to be ethical and honest with your customers. But there's just so much more risk out there now than there was before. And so that proactive attitude of identifying the issues, getting help, and just avoiding it altogether is, I think, pivotal to success. The dealerships that I interact with who are tremendously successful versus just moderately successful, I would say that is the culture difference, an attitude of just let's figure it out.
Very, very cool. And I'm going to let you. No, I'm going to let you jump right in here. I know that we're 26 minutes into the podcast. And that's about where we want to keep it, 25-30 minutes. So this has been a fantastic time with you. I'd love to continue the conversation.
Sure.
At some point in the future, for sure. But I know David had a question, and
it was just on there's some places that we would still consider the Wild Wild West of communication. So let's just say if you wanted to communicate, if a salesperson was trying to communicate with a customer, say on Instagram direct message, is there any best practices of limitations of what can they do there? Like a Facebook Messenger or direct message. So let's just say Facebook Messenger, because that's something that we use quite a bit. So is this still the Wild Wild West? Is there limitations, or where are we at?
So what's funny is that in my first workshop session yesterday, at the end when I opened up for questions, one of the first ones came up with somebody who was just like,
what about Facebook?
What about Facebook Messenger? Because that goes to their phone, right? People have the app on their phone and stuff. I would say there's no definitive rule or anything out there that says that a Facebook message is not a call or a text message, but at the same time, it's counterintuitive that a Facebook message would be a call or text message under the TCPA, because there's no cellular service or cellular technology the message, right? It's happening over a totally different type of network. I mean, the average consumer is not really going to understand the difference in the way that they get internet services versus phone calls. But
that's how the law works.
Right. And I would say the same thing for an Instagram thing. Though I think that is weird to reach out to your customers on their Instagram. It just comes out weird.
Instagram direct message, but you never know. I mean, you may have not. For a salesperson, so let's say we're working at a dealership and I was a salesperson, I call this customer, they send us an email, they gave us a bad phone number, they're not responding to email, but you found them on their social platform, let me just send them a message and see if maybe they can connect that way. Or some customers, there are marketing that we do put out, and they say send us a message on Facebook and we can communicate that way. So I just didn't know if some of the regulations, if that applies.
Yeah, no, I would again, there's not a definitive rule, but my judgment would be that the TCPA wouldn't, there wouldn't be a way to claim that it was the same. Now, that being said, that Wild Wild West is quickly
getting some sheriffs.
Quickly getting some sheriffs. I mean, one of my biggest priorities this year for dealerships is compliance with upcoming data practices. I mean, dealerships, they know how much data they have at their disclosure. The rest of the world doesn't, because they don't realize that dealerships are essentially banks. I mean, they're regulated like a bank is. They have all the same information that is handed to a bank. If you think about it, what I mean by that, like the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act disclosures that have to be on retail installment contracts and stuff. Dealerships are being treated with that exact same sensitivity, and they have super sensitive information on their books. And where is happening?
I would almost have to imagine, and we'll leave it at this. And I know you got at least one question. You got at least one question we want to ask.
60 seconds for a fun lightning round.
Yeah, but before you do this, I would have to imagine, as an attorney walking through a dealership, that your spidey sense would just be going insane as you're going across and you see a credit application with a customer's social security number just sitting there all by itself on a desk. It's like,
I'm a nightmare for the dealers that I actually buy my cars from. Right? The last one I did, I was actually so impressed by their forms that I brought it up eventually. I was like, by the way, I'm a car lawyer. Great job.
Good job.
Great. Their TCPA stuff was all put together correctly, and I was impressed.
Declining. See, that's why I told you put on airplane
We'll do it next time.
That dirty phone of mine. But
all right.
Anyhow, so hey,
lightning round.
60,
we'll get this wrapped up.
60 seconds. I got 60 seconds on the clock. Let's do a little lightning round. So I'm going to ask you some questions, which are the interview questions you were not asked when you were hired.
Okay.
At the firm. So you ready for this?
All right, I'm ready.
All right. So what was a favorite nickname you had?
As a child?
Yeah.
I did not have a favorite nickname, but I was referred to by someone I didn't like as Scatty Addy, and it took off. It took off for years. To this day, I hate that kid.
I had Fanny Farmer.
Fanny Farmer.
Rough.
I'm Davey Baby. So.
Oh, jeez. Well, it sucks. My brother's got Man of Steel and stuff, and then I came along as Scatty Addy.
Okay, if you're a DJ, what would your DJ name be then?
DJ Scatty?
Yeah, DJ Scatty.
It had
Good
to be,
stuff.
yeah.
If you had your own food truck, what would it be?
Tacos, hands down.
Tacos, hands down. Bam. Love that one. What is the funniest Wi-Fi network you ever came across? Network name.
Impeach him just recently. Yeah, it was in an airport. Somebody had named their
That's
cell phone
funny.
there.
Oh my goodness. And last question. What TV show you binge watching?
Right now?
Yeah.
I'm on my third work through of Parks and Rec.
Oh,
all right.
I love it.
And that was 60
awesome.
seconds of the lightning round. This is a little fun that we had to throw in there.
Yep.
That was it, man. 60 seconds right off the clock.
I love
So
it.
that's it.
So this is super fun. We do appreciate you coming.
Sure.
Hopefully we were your most fun interview you've done or workshop you've done here at NADA
So
or
far,
anywhere.
you guys are winning, yeah.
Yeah, we like to win it hands down.
Perfect.
All right, so we will definitely reconnect. We'll have you on as another guest, and I will definitely look forward to that. So from NADA 2020 show in Las Vegas, you got David, and Adam.
Camera
That's a
1, 2,
wrap.
3.